Greetings. My name is Dr. Cynthia Hutchison. Welcome to this introduction to a full-length course that I teach called Sacred Geometry and Energy Therapy. This is a fast-moving presentation and it's content-rich, but remember that you can come back and revisit this at any time to relook at the images, to gaze upon them, to study them, and to reread the script that I've provided on the slides. This course has evolved over the last 35 years in my career as a holistic nurse and energy therapist. I think it's going to entice you to want to learn more. And if indeed you resonate with my teaching style and you like the content, you can come back and sign up for either the online course or you can come learn with me in person. So let's go ahead and get on with it. I want to tell you that I do teach this from a universally spiritual perspective. I am Christian, and I could also teach this from a Christian perspective as well. Let's go ahead and have a brief meditation. Let's set our intention for this time together. I invite you to relax your body and begin to focus on receiving some deep and cleansing breaths, feeling the life force within you, receiving peace, filling your heart with gratitude, setting the intention to open your thinking to truth, your feeling to beauty, and your willing to goodness. Thinking, feeling, and willing are the three attributes of the soul. And ideally, we want our thinking to be aligned with truth, our feeling to be aligned with beauty, our willing to be aligned with goodness. Knowing truth leads us to beauty and goodness. Knowing beauty leads us to truth and goodness. Acting in goodness leads us to beauty and truth. And so it is. Let's look at what we'll be covering during this time together. As I said, this will be an overview of tying together energy therapy with sacred geometry in my way of understanding. By the end of the presentation, I will give you some ways that you can practice this with a client if you already have a professional practice in energy therapy. And you can also apply the same method for your own self-care. I'll be bringing in the concepts of perennial wisdom. And I believe that even if you decide not to do the full-length course, that this in it of itself will be very rich for you and satisfying and hopefully intriguing and make you want to learn more. And certainly, as I have learned about sacred geometry over these many years, I would say that whenever I learn about it or practice it or experience it out in nature or through artwork, it puts me in states of joy and happiness and adventure. And I go into a feeling of speechless wonder, like, wow, this is amazing. I experience awe. I experience great gratitude for creation and for my own life. And I always have a desire to learn more. So I hope that will be your experience too. Here, let's go back. Okay, we'll start out with some definition of terms. I'm going to read some of them for you because I think it's really important that we lay this as our foundation, and I'll give you some basic theory as well. So let's first define what is symbolism. Symbolism is an ancient and universal language without words that triggers a complicated series of perceptions and beliefs that imparts information and arouses emotions just with a brief glance of taking in an image. Symbols can evoke profound emotions and thoughts if they're not neutral, depending on the association made by the person perceiving the image. Symbols can be used positively or negatively through marketing and selling, campaigns, propaganda, promotion, and for inspiration and meditation. And here's just a few examples. Now, if you don't know what a symbol means, that it will probably be neutral, or you might decide you think what it means, and it maybe to other people it really means something else. So symbols are very individual. Now, I think we'd all agree that heart is a universal symbol for love, and therefore it would be positive. Also, the peace symbol, for instance, most people would have a positive affiliation with that. The sign in the center above, like a do not enter, that's probably pretty neutral, but it could be negative for someone. Clearly, the Nazi flag is probably going to be negative for the vast majority of people. The McDonald's symbol, for me years ago, I would say it was a positive symbol, and now maybe not so much. Um, and then the middle symbol, the cladig, if you don't know what that means, it might be a neutral symbol to you, but if you know what it means, it actually corresponds with the aspects of soul, thinking, feeling, and willing, in alignment with truth, beauty, and goodness, which then actually brings us to a state of hara alignment, which we'll talk about more later. They say that all of the religions and great teachings, they say that all of the sacred books of humanity can be summed up in just a few symbols. To decipher them and to experience their ancient wisdom, we have to invite them to come alive in us through our feeling and our willing, through our imagination, our intuition, our inspiration, and our spirit. The intellect alone is not capable of wisdom, understanding, beauty, and sacred geometry. Truly understanding and experiencing the healing power of sacred geometry is a sacred function of the human soul that must be fostered through prayer, intention, and devotion. Symbols, including sacred geometry forms, are universal, and they go beyond the rational, conscious mind and the left brain into the realm of the unconscious, where soul and spirit and cosmic memory resides. The left brain sees sacred geometry and seeks understanding through linear thinking and the rational aspects of mathematics. But the right brain sees sacred geometry and takes in the symbolism and the beauty of divine proportion. True art is full of divine proportion and sacred geometry. Many symbols are geometric in nature. In today's presentation, we will focus on one of the sacred geometry forms, the circle, as a foundation for further study and integrating the 18 other sacred geometry shapes that I teach in my course. Let's define sacred geometry. It is an ancient science that's very mathematical in nature, which explains that the energy patterns which create and unify all things reveal the precise way that the energy of creation organizes itself. I recommend Robert Gilbert's website for those of you who want to learn more. The sacred geometric blueprint that underlies the structure of everything reveals itself through patterns, frequencies, ratios, and forms, which are expressed with synchronicity between nature, science, music, math, art, and the physical world. I will mostly be focusing on the visual forms. Sacred geometry is associated with the belief that the creator being, by whatever name you call the creator being, is the geometer of the world. Multiple meanings can be attributed to the various shapes, and some shapes can share meanings with other shapes based on your individuality, your culture and experience, your faith, and other ways of knowing. So this is a very individual thing. So you must follow your guidance and your inner knowing. On every scale, every natural pattern of growth or movement conforms inevitably to one or more geometric shapes. For example, let's look at the creation of life as related to the circle, which is the most basic geometric form. So here on the left, we have the drawing of the circle, the seed of life, and the flower of life. And on the right, we have actual photographs of the conception process and cell division of a fertilized egg. So you can see how we progress from a single circle to multiple circles in the sacred geometric form of the flower of life, and how this is actually reflected in our own conceptions and our growth and development within our mother's womb. Sacred geometry shapes have deep metaphysical meaning. And besides being beautiful, they have mathematical properties and thousands of years of history from all cultures. These symbols have been used for art and decoration in religious, spiritual, and healing contexts. But to simplify everything, let's just say that everything's energy and all things earthly are absolutely and entirely ordered by geometric patterns. Where there is matter, there is geometry. Now let's put together a concept of energy therapy and sacred geometry. I know for me, I have a tendency to monkey mind at any time when I'm praying, when I'm meditating, when I'm working with clients. But I have found that since I started working with sacred geometry, that holding that form in my imagination and my intention, seeing it in my mind's eye, really helps me to focus and to hold that healing intention for my client, or if I'm praying for someone. The use of geometric shapes for healing work is very personal. It also can be very powerful and effective. My approach to teaching this work is very non-dogmatic and supports your own individual intuition, your exploration, and your creativity. But it is my experience that practitioners and clients can benefit from the conscious application of sacred geometry. In my approach, we will combine the symbolism of sacred geometry and perennial wisdom as a way to deepen our healing work for ourselves and for others. And we'll also be incorporating prayerful healing affirmations for ourselves or for our clients that we can do silent or aloud. Let's talk about perennial wisdom. It speaks to the three transcendental aspects of love that exist within each human soul. These are truth, beauty, and goodness. Truth, beauty, and goodness are the innate ultimate desires of human beings, the way we are originally intended and created. Truth, beauty, and goodness are the longing of our souls because we are eternal beings of divine origin. That is our nature. Truth, beauty, and goodness transcend matter, space, and time. And these are the eternal attributes of the divine: truth, beauty, goodness. The philosophy of perennial wisdom aligns truth, beauty, and goodness with the three human soul capacities of thinking, feeling, and willing. When we are in right relationship with our loving Creator, with ourselves, and with humanity, our thinking aligns with truth, our feeling aligns with beauty, and our willing aligns with goodness. The three branches of human knowing are identified as science, art, and religion. These, in turn, ideally align with truth, beauty, and goodness when they are in divine order. Trinity is the quality of three and aligns with the three qualities of soul. So, as I said before, when thinking is aligned with truth, when feeling is aligned with beauty, when willing is aligned with goodness, which also is associated with three regions of our physical body: our head with thinking, our heart with feeling, and our limbs and trunk area, especially lower trunk, hands and feet, with goodness. When we consciously align our thinking, feeling, and willing with truth, beauty, and goodness, we are actually achieving a form of hara alignment, which is a well-known practice in the field of energy therapy. These three transcendentals also describe the qualities of the creator being: God, the divine great spirit, the force, whatever word you use. God is the source of truth, beauty, and goodness. They transcend all human diversity and unite us through the objective qualities of all that exists within humanity. The ideas of what are true, good, and beautiful are found to be similar across time and cultures, thus binding humanity in mutual aspirations for our growth, development, and community living. Sacred geometric forms apply to all cultures, religions, and moral personal ideologies, giving us the possibility of a symbolic language that unites us. I find that very comforting and beautiful, and I have found it to be true. Let's touch just a bit on the benefits, the history, what is macrocosm and microcosm, and look at images of sacred geometry in nature and that are man-made through art and architecture. I have experienced and witnessed benefits to body, mind, spirit health from the application of sacred geometry, especially when I consciously experience its truth, beauty, and goodness. Consciously or unconsciously perceiving and contemplating sacred geometry can help us to integrate our right and left brains, making our thinking more integrative and heart-centered. It can also cultivate our intuitive capacities and inspire a sense of beauty within us and in the world around us. Sacred geometry teaches us truth in an intuitive and soulful way, as well as in an intellectual way. Beauty is truth and goodness. Think about it. Do you love to gaze at beautiful art or nature? How does it make you feel? What about watching dogs or children play or experiencing holy and wholesome intimacy with a loved one? I trust you have had the experience of perceiving beauty as healing. Learning some basics of sacred geometry can enhance a healing response from the body, mind, and spirit. Earthly life is amazingly geometric and beautiful. We experience sacred geometry through all of our senses, but most obviously through sight. Do you take time to notice and to be in holy awe when you go outside for a morning walk, or you take a hike somewhere, or sit by a lake or a river? When you go out for a walk or stargaze, do you go barefoot and drink in the sights and the sounds and the smells? Or maybe do you take your phone or listen to electronic music? Awe, wonder, gratitude, and reverence while in nature raise your vibrational frequency, thus supporting healing. You might know the saying, be still and know that I am God. A bit of history, just some highlights. The study of sacred geometry from a mathematical and mystical perspective is ancient. The golden mean, the basis of geometry, was discovered and rediscovered throughout history, which is the reason for its several names. Considered the key to the physics of the cosmos is the word golden mean. This was used in Egypt to build pyramids and in Greece to build the Parthenon. Golden mean has other synonyms: divine proportion, golden ratio, and the sacred cut. It is applied in the fields of math, geometry, art, architecture, physics, genealogy, anatomy, physiology, botany, and more. It's universally applicable. So here's all the words. We also know it as pi, which is the proportion of 1 to 1.618, etc., out into infinity, and the Fibonacci sequence. These golden proportions are everywhere in our own human anatomy and in all of nature and creation. Have you heard of the Platonic Solids when you took sophomore geometry in high school? These are the basic forms in sacred geometry, and they are named after Plato. Who was Plato? He lived back in the early years as a Greek philosopher and founder of Platonic school of thought. He's considered the pivotal figure in ancient Greek and Western philosophy, along with his teacher, Socrates, and his most famous student, Aristotle. He is often cited as one of the founders of Western religion and spirituality. Both Plato and Aristotle were influenced by Pythagoras, who was the father of geometry, and he died 70 years before Plato's birth. Geometry is the clearest model by which to describe the metaphysical realm, said Plato. He also considered the golden mean as the key to the physics of the cosmos. This is also agreed upon by James Oshman, PhD, who authored the well-known, highly respected book, The Scientific Basis of Energy Medicine. Sacred geometry is everywhere in creation. It's at the macrocosmic level, the microcosmic level, and everywhere in between in the scope of our human vision. Sacred geometry and the golden mean are incorporated into most sacred and fine art from all cultures and religions. Application of the divine proportion, or the golden mean, elicits the soul response of experiencing beauty. We may not be consciously thinking of the golden mean or sacred geometry when we behold beauty. We can receive its benefits simply by taking in the divine proportion which exists in all of nature and Mother Earth. Now let's learn about the macrocosm and the microcosm, which leads us into the very important concept of as above, so below. This key concept, the macrocosm, it is the whole of a complex structure, especially in the world or the universe, in contrast with the small or representative part of it, which is the microcosm. So everything is on a scale of relativism, with the largest possibly being the macrocosm and the smallest the microcosm. For example, we're looking at the nebula called the Eye of God, and this is obviously very, very huge out in outer space. And yet we see the very same image in the visible world, in the human eye. Here's another example of the spiral. We see a spiral galaxy in outer space. And at a smaller scale, we see it above the earth as it forms a hurricane. Yet a hurricane, from our perspective and our size, seems very macroscopic, but it's smaller, much, much, much smaller than the true macroscopic scale of a spiral galaxy. Similar, the images on the right, there's a nebula called the DNA nebula in outer space, compared with an actual micro photograph of the DNA spiral, which is in our own bodies. So this is truly macrocosmic and microcosmic. This concept, as above, so below, we think originally comes from Hermes Trismegistus. He was a contemporary of Moses and was the first great Egyptian philosopher and founder of ancient mystery schools. He wrote the Emerald Tablet. You may have heard of that. It was purported to hold the secrets of the universe and became one of the pillars of Western alchemy and continues to be read and respected through this day. This principle of as above, so below is expressed in many aspects of creation within the macrocosm and microcosm and at the level of visibility to the human eye. As above, so below, right out of the Emerald Tablet. This maxim is associated with sacred geometry, Hermeticism, the Tarot, the Jewish Kabbalah, Christian mysticism, and Rosicrucianism. Its three major principles are earth and heaven correspond to each other. They're in relationship. The macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm and vice versa. We just saw a few examples of that. The invisible spiritual world is reflected on the earthly plane, in the visible world, and in the microcosmic world. Thus, they are connected and discernible through sacred geometry. As above, so below. This concept is also reflected in the Lord's Prayer, which I know many of you know from St. Matthew's Gospel, where we pray on earth as it is in heaven. Let's look at these two symbols depicting the principle of as above, so below. But now we're looking at sacred geometry figures. We have a hexagon on the left and a Vesica Pisces on the right. And they each hold twin figures, one being above and one being below. So we can really understand that this symbolism is portraying as above, so below, with its two identical figures in relation to each other. And here's just one sample of beautiful artwork, Celtic artwork, also showing the principle of as above, so below. We can see the DNA spiral of life in the microcosm and the macrocosm. And I would say that the spiral, along with the circle, are probably the two most important sacred geometric forms. And let's just gaze upon these beautiful, beautiful spiral images. Macrocosmic, microcosmic, and in the world of visibility, nature. If you took the full course, I would teach you how to work with the mother DNA spiral form within the human body and human energy field. Personally, I absolutely love spirals. I have hundreds and hundreds of images and photographs of spirals that I just love to gaze upon. This is amazing to me. I came upon this a few months ago. The image on the left is a cross-section magnification of a spliced strand of DNA. And you can see how it is exactly the sacred geometric image of the seed of life. And then you see how it occurs in nature at the visible level in plant life. This really blew my mind when I discovered these images. But what about the rest of our senses? It is easy to see through the sense of sight how sacred geometry is apparent in the macrocosm, microcosm, and the usual visionary world that we see through. But did you know that our senses of hearing and touch and taste and smell are also a result of specifically proportioned geometric relationships? For example, when you're listening to your favorite symphony, you are hearing sacred geometry. When you are smelling a rose, you are smelling sacred geometry. My course does focus on the sense of sight and energetic sensitivity within the act of healing. This is a very huge topic, and you could spend the rest of your life and only touch the tip of the iceberg studying it. So here's an image of the vibration of sound that shows the flower of life, and then the micro photograph that we just looked at in the spliced DNA strand. So you see how they reflect each other. And now we're going to spend a few minutes just gazing upon images from the four kingdoms of nature. And my hope is that as you gaze upon these, that it will more deeply put you in a place of awe and wonder, reverence, gratitude, humility, and mystery within the macrocosm, microcosm, and the visible world of creation. Remember, you can come back to this slideshow later and really spend more time gazing upon them. But that was the mineral world, and here's the plant world. Isn't that amazing? the animal world, honeycomb, human anatomy, the macrocosm, earth and outer space. I took that picture right outside my front door one day, and that's just a few miles from my house. Let's spend a few minutes looking at the application of sacred geometry through art and architecture. So we know that people have studied geometry in order to create architecture and art. This is for practical reasons, so they could support their physical life and survival, but it's also for spiritual reasons, because they wanted to feed their souls with beauty and to create structures that would energetically support high vibrations for their prayers and worship. You may recognize some of these buildings: the mosque, the Greek temple, the Japanese temple, the Indian temple, and the Native American circle. The pyramids, the labyrinth in Chartres Cathedral, the Tower of Tours near Glastonbury and Stonehenge, and the spiral staircase in Rome, Italy. Well, we don't have time in this introduction to cover the topic of art and architecture with sacred geometry, but it is really a favorite topic of mine. Let's move on to looking at more of the symbolism and geometry of the basic shapes by looking at the vertical and horizontal lines, the cross, and the quality of one within circles and variations of circles. So this shows some of the shapes that I'll be teaching you in the full course that we would be working with and learning how to apply in a session or self-care. All right, we're starting with the basics: vertical, horizontal, and curved lines. Just think about it. All shapes you've ever seen are variations of straight and curved lines. This particular shape is the astrological symbol of the earth. I wonder why. Well, we'll find out later. In our healing practices, we apply the vertical line through visualizing or experiencing a column of light to ground ourselves to heaven and earth. That is, to anchor our energy with the above and with the below. When we consciously connect horizontally, we are embracing our incarnation on earth to be pure and noble, to be a vessel for the good, the true, and the beautiful. When we gaze upon the horizontal within nature in a conscious way, it connects us with the earth, with our communities, and with Mother Nature. The vertical represents our connection to heaven, to the cosmos, and to the earth. Anchored to heaven and earth, it is also representing the concept of time. The horizontal line gives us the connection to earth, to our community, and to space. When they are placed together, the vertical and the horizontal, they create the symbol of the cross. Therefore, the astrological symbol of the earth has a cross in it because it represents space and time within the circle of the physical world of matter. The circle and the sphere represent oneness. So in Earth School, we very much usually feel that we are bound by time and space and matter. But are we really? Let's look at the religious symbology and the sacred geometry of the cross. Most of us know that this is the most important symbol in Christianity. But why? Because it represents the intersection of heaven and earth, time and space, in matter through the incarnation of the Christ being. Let's look at the Native American medicine wheel, which is the intersection of a vertical and horizontal line. It holds a cross in the middle. We know that the Native American medicine wheel honors the four elements, the four directions, and it also corresponds to the square, which symbolizes physicality and matter. The word matter also connected to the word mother. So we're actually looking at a representation of the qualities of number 1 and number 4. We even have a cross shape in our own bodies. And notice that our heart is at the intersection point of the vertical and the horizontal. As an energy therapist, we prepare ourselves to be a vessel for the good and the true and the beautiful by aligning our thinking, our feeling, and our willing. And during this preparation, we consciously remember our connection to the spiritual world by feeling our verticality, by anchoring ourselves to heaven and earth. This raises our vibrational frequency. And this is a form of hara alignment as well. Once we're at the table, if our client is lying horizontally and we are standing up, we can even have an awareness of the presence of a cross through the orientations of our bodies, with the practitioner in a vertical position and the recipient in a horizontal position. And if you want to pause this video at some point, you can do that and take some time to really experience the vertical and the horizontal within you. Let's move on and look at the quality of 1 within the circle and the sphere. So this symbol is very rich in meaning. In your own mind's eye, look at the circle or look at the images on the screen. And notice it gives you the feeling and the quality of oneness. A circle is two-dimensional. It has no beginning and no end. Therefore, it represents cycles of time and eternity. It also symbolizes vitality and health, the cosmos, the circle of life, divinity, perfection, oneness, completeness, integrity, harmony, balance, unity, equality, wholeness, inclusivity, connection, community, the cycle of creation, and source energy or God. A circle is two-dimensional. A sphere is three-dimensional. All planets are spheres with the sun at the center of our solar system. The circle is also connected to 0. It symbolizes embryonic potential and also represents the number 1. Gaze upon this beautiful chart of the progression of circles from the 1 circle to the infinite through the flower of life. Most of us are familiar with worshiping in circular formations. This has always been a part of human spiritual practices, and it continues to be. When we gather for community, for worship, for learning, for music, for song, for dance, we often sit or stand or dance in circles. This represents our connection, our oneness, our equality. My favorite image of people sitting in circles is at the upper right. Let's look at sacred art. Mandalas um, are used for meditation. They're usually created within a circle shape. And notice too, it's not just circular, but we can see forms within forms. So in these mandalas, we can see triangles, squares, 6 and 12 pointed stars, and spiral formations. And note not only the circles and other shapes, but note the presence of concentric circles in these next three images. They all have symbolic meaning. Concentric circles can represent the point and the periphery, as well as subtle layers or levels, such as the human aura, which has concentric but blended levels that each have a specific vibrational frequency. So when you gaze upon sacred art, you are entraining the energy of the sacred geometry within it into you. This comes from one of my very favorite churches, cathedrals in Chartres, France. It's one of the famous rose windows. So again, you can see, yes, in general, it's a circle, but we also see other forms within forms, and we also see the concentric circles as well. And everything has symbolic meaning. I'm almost sure most of you have seen this image by Doré, and you can see here the point in the periphery, the concentric circles, and it's also the astrological symbol of the sun. This is an image of a crop circle that I have not been able to interpret or find someone yet who can help me, but I've gazed upon it. I can't figure it out. Crop circles are all full of sacred geometry, and I have lots of those images to share with you if you end up taking the full course. Here are some other images of crop circles, and notice that these particular crop circles all have a basic circular shape, but again, we see form within forms, and we see some beautiful examples of some of the other sacred geometry shapes. Now let's study the image of the seed of life and the flower of life, which you've been introduced to. All geometric forms can be found within the flower of life. These are circles that build infinitely outward. Overlapping circles connect the center and the diameters. We can see in the flower of life the hexagon, which is the shape of the honeycomb. It holds the six-pointed star. We see the Vesica Pisces and other forms. It's concentric in nature. It has layers. We see the point in the periphery, and we can see multiple seed of life images within the flower of life. The flower of life image symbolizes creation and the unity of everything. We are all created from the same blueprint. I want to bring this image back to you. I love gazing upon it because it is the imagery of our own conception and of birth. We see that life begins as a circle, and then from one circle, it grows and grows into the many or even infinite circles. An example of Japanese Zen calligraphy, also showing the same principle, the concept of creation, progressing from the unity of life and oneness through the form of the circle, through the triangle to the square, which represents physical matter and density. I wanted to share with you a few beautiful images of the flower of life. And these are also images of the flower of life that are very ancient, thousands of years old. And just for a moment, I want to remind you of the reality of orbs. Do you remember finding orbs in some of your photographs from cameras over the last decade or so? They mysteriously pop up. They're usually in places where human beings are in prayer or in a sense of joyfulness or in community. Who are they and what are they? Let's transition to looking at applications to hands-on healing. Sacred geometry forms actually show you what you're going to be doing or intending through your mind and heart as a practitioner via the form. Each shape actually elicits a soul feeling if you are attuned to it. So, which image gives you the feeling of union between the above and the below? Yes, it's the two circles in the vertical orientation that create one version of the Vesica Pisces. A Vesica Pisces is the intersection of two circles with the same radius. The center of each circle lies on the perimeter of the other. This shape represents union, common ground, blending, shared vision. These are important concepts in energy therapy, very important for our work. And notice there is a vertical and a horizontal orientation. In the vertical Vesica Pisces, that's one above the other, this represents a portal or a union between the spiritual world and the world of matter and physicality, such as our human union with God through prayer. It is the ancient symbol for the alchemical marriage between the creator and the created, and it has within it the shape of the human eye. The horizontal Vesica, when the circles are side by side, when they intersect, um, they are representing the union at the same level of being, such as in human marriage or within an energy therapy session when the practitioner is intentionally holding sacred space to blend feels with the client. So on the left is the vertical Vesica Pisces, and on the right is the horizontal Vesica Pisces. As we prepare to do the holy work of energy therapy, we aspire to be in the highest vibrational frequency possible for us at that time, the vibration of love. Therefore, we should attune with both the spiritual world and with our client. So first we would visualize the vertical Vesica Pisces, which is the upper circle representing the realm of spirit and the lower circle representing the earthly world and my own physical body. And then we can transition to visualizing and experiencing the horizontal Vesica for our client attunement. So I start out, I'm in my own auric field. I stand as a sovereign, individual, separate human being. But as I move into the sacred space of the session with my client, I invite a blending of our fields so that simultaneously we are there as individuals, but we are also energetically united. So this is a holy moment of union that we share when we do our spiritual healing work. And this also occurs anytime when two people are experiencing closeness, intimacy, and bonding. Let's look at the eye of God Nebula again, and just be in a moment of awe and wonder that this actually exists in outer space. If we have the eyes to see, we can know that the spiritual world is teaching us an important truth through the sacred geometry of the Vesica Pisces. When we look in someone's eye, we often think of it as the window to their soul. Think of when you have had intimate eye contact with another person, or a very sincere conversation when you're looking at each other eye to eye. You're really connecting at the soul level, because it is the portal to the human soul. Do you see a similarity between these three sacred geometric forms? We have the six-pointed star, we have the vertical Vesica Pisces, and we have the cross. All of these can be applied for attunement with the spiritual world, because they represent the above with the below, the vertical with the horizontal. This reminds us that multiple images can be used for a specific intention, and that it very much depends on your individuality and what you know and what you believe. Therefore, you should always feel free to explore and discover, and then to follow your guidance. Now, when you bring a treatment to closure, when you're finishing up your work with a client, it's very important that you return to normal, healthy individual separate boundaries, and you're back to your own energy. Your client is back to his or her own energy. So visually, in your mind's eye and with your intention, you then need to actually transition from the Vesica Pisces, where you're attuned and in union with each other energetically, and separate that back into two separate circles to return to normal, healthy individual boundaries. Well, a bit more on the Vesica Pisces. Can you see multiple vesicas within this image of the flower of life? And from a sacred geometry point of view, why do you think an early symbol of Christianity was the fish? And some cues are that Christ said, "Come, I will make you fishers of men," and the apostles were fishermen. So let's look at this image of the fish. It actually is a Vesica Pisces, which is the union of heaven and earth, of above and below. Let's look at just a little bit, a few examples of how sacred geometry is applied to architecture with the Vesica Pisces. So you can see that the intersection of the circle can then be expressed in architecture through doorways and windows, because doorways and windows actually represent a place of threshold between the two worlds. So the intention when you enter a sacred space, like a church or a synagogue or a mosque or some other temple, that you're passing through a threshold into another world or dimension. So it's like going through a portal. And the same is when you exit a holy place. And again, briefly, I'm just going to show you a few images from Christian artwork. The Vesica Pisces was really big in medieval times, and actually in an ongoing way, it's in modern Christian art as well. But you could see how the Vesica is very prevalent in these images of the Christ and the Blessed Mother, the Lamb of God. And here also as the cover of Chalice Well in Glastonbury, England. This supposedly was the place where Joseph of Arimathea secretly buried the chalice that was used at the Last Supper. Here's a beautiful image of modern art representing the maiden, the mother, and the crone. So you can see the Vesica, you can also see concentric vesicas, and you can also see the threefoldness of the Trinity. And another modern art image of the Vesica, this portal between the two worlds and a union between the two, the shadow and the light. I'd like to teach you now a self-care intervention that you can use to clear your own energy field. And it's also an application that you can use in a energy therapy session when you are working with a client. So we're going to bring to mind the image of the circle and then the seed of life. And then if you can visualize it in your mind's eye, the flower of life, which is more complex. And we also bring to mind the thoughts of the quality of one. This would be the first step in a 12-step sequence that I teach in the full course. But really, it could be used as a standalone as well, or just for your own personal clearing or a quick clearing with the client. And what you do is, after you do your practitioner preparation, and you hold this intention for clearing through the field of your client or yourself, you would visualize that image of the flower of life above your head or the client's head like a hoop. And most of you know what a hula hoop is. Imagine it about that big because it can actually hold the size of the form of the human shape as the hoop goes down the length of the body in a 360-degree way. So once you've done your practitioner preparation, going quiet within, centering, grounding, and attuning, and aligning your thinking, your feeling, and your willing with truth and beauty and goodness, you bring your hands well above the field, as high as they will go for your own self-care, and then bring this seed of life or flower of life gradually through your own field as this flower of life image penetrates through your physical body and through your energy body and down the whole length of your body past your feet. So when you're working on yourself, you can just visualize your etheric fingertips continuing down the length of your body, all the way past your feet, at which point you release any of the energetic debris that no longer serves you. So that could be, it could be physical toxins. It could be emotional debris. It could be thought forms that no longer serve you. It could be belief systems. It could be dogma or doctrine that no longer fits your evolution of consciousness. So that's the idea. We're actually going to sweep through the field 9 times with the intention that with each sweeping through the field, we're collecting energetic debris kind of in a magnetic way, that as this beautiful sacred geometry form comes through your field and through your body, it's magnetically collecting that which no longer serves. And then when you get past your feet, you hold the intention of release and releasing it back into the universal energy field where it can be recycled or serve in a new, more moral and noble way that's aligned with truth and beauty and goodness. We will then add some affirmations, prayerful affirmations that are related to the specific intentions of the 9 sweeps. You could, of course, do additional sweeps beyond the 9. 9 is what has worked and is generally effective, but you can always feel free to follow guidance and do more. The first sweep and the 9th sweep are very general for the collective field. And your intention or affirmation could be something like this. May my body, mind, soul, and spirit be healed. I'm sweeping through the whole length of my body to my feet and well past my feet, and then releasing out into the universal energy field. So that first sweep is for my collective field. Each subsequent sweep through the field is going to be associated with a specific chakra of the 7 major chakras. And we'll start with clearing at the crown chakra, and then we'll move through the brow, through the throat, through the heart, through the solar plexus, through the sacral, through the root, and then do one more sweep for the collective field. Each chakra, as it spins and radiates, creates its own field. So therefore, you have at least 7 fields that all interpenetrate each other without interfering with each other, and they coexist in the same space. So with each sweep, you're kind of focusing on a specific chakra and field, which has a theme that seems pretty universally applicable to anyone who does energy therapy. Of course, you can change these prayerful affirmations and individualize them, but these seem to be very effective, and you might want to start with these. So you could either sit or you could stand and do this for yourself, and you would apply it in a very similar way to a client that you have. But your client at that point would be horizontal, and you would, of course, be standing. So when you're sweeping through a client, your sweep is going to be down the length of the client's body from above the head to past the feet. But right now we're focusing on doing this for ourselves. So let's visualize the flower of life or seed of life well above our own heads. And then as our fingers slowly start to come down, we're holding the prayerful affirmation of clearing. May the memory, start that one again. We're starting back at the transpersonal point just so that we can have the experience of 9 sweeps. May my body, mind, soul, and spirit be healed. Bring your arms up again in this beautiful gesture of supplication and blessing. And now with a focus on the crown chakra and the outermost field. May the memory of the truth of my divinity be healed. Release. Now with a focus on the brow center and the 6th field, may all errors in my thinking be healed. All the way down, and then release well past the feet. Visualize the flower seed of life And come down as we focus on the throat center. May all misbegotten words within me be healed. Down, out, release. And now with the focus on the heart chakra and the fourth field, may my broken heart be healed. Release. The focus on the solar plexus and the third field. May all misuse of power within me be healed. Now, with the focus on the sacral chakra, the second field out from the body, may all aberrance in sexuality and poverty within me be healed. Release. Now, a focus on the root center and the etheric, the first field past the physical body. May all fear of survival within me be healed. And then the ninth sweep again is for the composite field, the whole field, all of the 7 levels. I repeat the prayerful affirmation. May my body, mind, soul, and spirit be healed. Release. And close with your hands at the heart. And give thanks for this time of reflection and self-healing and incorporating the beautiful flower of life within our own field. All of these sacred geometric forms are already in our field and in our physical bodies. We're just reigniting that energetic memory of their existence within us. We're reaffirming, we're strengthening, we're helping our bodies and souls and spirits to remember the sacred geometry that's already within us. So, as I said, if you were doing the full 10-step sequence, this would be the first intervention you would apply, but it can also be done as a standalone intervention. And at the end of a treatment, whether it be for yourself or for someone else, you want to make sure that you're grounded, that you're centered, that you're separating fields if you've worked with a client, and then taking time to share with your client or just reflect with yourself if you did it for self-care. I just wanted to give you a little visual of the other forms that you would be implementing if you did choose to do the full sequence of the sacred geometry sequence. So this is actually what the whole intervention sequence looks like, just using the symbology. So we would be incorporating other sacred geometric forms as the lemniscate, the triangle, tetrahedron, the cube, the 5, 6, 7, and 8-pointed stars, the star tetrahedron, concentric circles, the heart shape, and the Shri yantra. And this is what the forms look like as well. And we're bringing the introduction presentation to an end right now. So I know I gave you a lot of information, so I hope you're not confused. I hope you're fascinated and just filled with mysticism and wonder and awe. And I hope that if you are having an experience that stays with you the rest of your life, and that you can always go back to this place as you revisit the images and start to find them more when you're out in nature, when you're looking at beautiful artwork. If you'd like to pursue studying with me for the full length course, for which you can receive continuing education contact hours, I teach it in a 2-day back-to-back format in a 12-hour course, or it's an online course with 7 hours. Plus, there's lots and lots of downloadable materials, including a 90-page curriculum, illustrated colored notebook. And the online course also has the demonstration videos, actual treatment videos, self-care videos, and how to draw the sacred geometry to help it integrate more into your body, mind, and spirit. So here's my website, boulderhealingtouch.com. I'm also available for individual sessions if you're interested. I will travel to teach the sacred geometry course, and I also teach presentations for small or large groups on body prayer. And I have a small store if you're interested in looking at the products. I want to thank you again for taking time to join me. I hope this was meaningful and interesting to you. And I send you love and blessings. Thank you.